Control. It's something that we all want. And anytime we're being challenged to just let it go, we normally white knuckle it until we just can't hold on any longer. There is also almost no other feeling of hopelessness like having a sick child, than knowing that you can do nothing to make it better. This is often where control is submitted to prayer to the only great physician around. In today's episode, I'll be talking with mom of two, Adriane White.
Hey guys.
Today we'll learn how she's been able to let go of her need for control and let Jesus take the wheel and all the in between. So Adriane, thank you for coming out today. I learned that you're now on staff at First West. And would you like to tell us a little bit how, that got going on and, what it is you do over there now?
Sure. Thanks for having me, Brandy. Yes. So I am on staff at First West as the discipleship ministry assistant. I started about 4 months ago, and my main role is providing administrative support to our discipleship pastor, Evan McFarland. It's been great. I've gotten to help with a lot of different things and have really enjoyed my position so far. And the people that I work with are seriously amazing.
All right. That's pretty cool. I remember having to give you my information for a date night a few weeks ago. So that's kind of clicking now. I'm like, okay, now I know why I had to give that to you.
Yes.
Because you're a special person now.
Oh, thank you. I've made it.
Yeah. And I think we'll probably tell more about this story later on or, the staff stuff. So we'll get to that later.
We will.
Yeah. So Adriane, I think your story is a unique parenting part to my show, but also something that many parents out there have to face at some point or another, especially other moms. And I think this is going to speak to a lot of people, especially in this tug of war with control that we have and sometimes the fear that kind of grips us. So I think this is a good story for a lot of people to hear.
I'm excited to share this part of our story.
Yeah. All right. So let's get started. Where does your story start?
So a little over 3 years ago, when I was pregnant with our son Jack, I remember Googling and reading just about all the things that could go wrong during and after pregnancy and just being overwhelmed and consumed by my thoughts, even despite having a healthy pregnancy. And so before having Jack, I thought that I had really grown in this area of my life, letting go of that need for control. My husband and I, we had moved states and had a really hard first year teaching in Texas. So there were so many big life changes and hard things that took place in those first years of our marriage. But looking back, I feel like I handled them well and trusted God and gave him control, just over those circumstances. But I feel like it pretty much all hit the fan, after Jackson was born.
Yes, it's a different level of control, huh? Yeah. Did this worry need for control continue once you had Jackson?
Yes. So I really struggled with postpartum anxiety. I had seriously disturbing and intrusive thoughts a few months into motherhood, which ultimately led me to be placed on a medication.
So how is postpartum anxiety different from other anxieties?
Ooh, this is a hard question to answer because postpartum anxiety probably looks different for each person that goes through it. Mm-hmm. But for me personally, I began experiencing just extreme worry that felt like it never stopped, just accompanied by irrational fears. For example, this is pretty morbid, but every time I got in the car to drive anywhere, I thought for sure we would get into a car crash and would vividly imagine what that would look like. And I remember when Jack started daycare at 3 months, and this was middle of COVID too. So his daycare, I never even got to go inside.
Yeah.
I never got to tour the daycare. And so I remember dropping him off at this place that I've never even been in and handing him over at the door, wondering if that would be the last time I saw him alive. And I know it sounds crazy, and I felt crazy.
Yeah. So is the postpartum part of it type of anxiety, is it just kind of tied to your children?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think it all goes back to the fact that I had just been given the greatest earthly gift that I'd ever received, a child, a little tiny human that I had this deep desire to protect and love and care for. I mean, I made it my mission. It was my mission.
Yeah.
And so it's almost, though, as if I had had some sort of awakening and that this world and everything in it is dangerous and terrifying and just seeing like the worst of it, really. And becoming a mom made me so aware of all of that. And just these things that could happen to my baby or my family or me or my husband. But thankfully, like, we had a community of believers around us and around me speaking truth into my life during that hard season. And I was able to get to a place where I knew that God loved my child more than I ever could.
Yeah. Because, man, I just feel like you're talking about that awakening there. And I'm like, man, like, I feel like that probably happens for most moms. You're like, oh, like, this something that was in you that you didn't know was there. But I don't think it always goes to what you were experiencing. But I know it definitely does happen more than we talk about.
It does.
For sure. How difficult, has it been, to let your heart believe that God loves your child more than you do?
Yeah, I think it's a really easy thing to say, but a lot harder to believe, especially if your struggle is like mine. I think to actually believe it, you have to know who God says he is and think about the way that he demonstrated his love for us through his son, Jesus.
Yeah.
I mean, God's love is unfathomable to me. Like, it's hard for me to wrap my mind around and hard for me to understand that there is a greater love than the love that I have for my children.
Yeah.
But I do know it exists because it's the basis of my faith. It's just something that I have to submit to.
Yeah, because it's really, that's something we could probably have on our walls, have tattooed on our bodies, but it's just a different thing when it's, have it tattooed on your heart, like to like really,
good,
really
Brandy.
know it. So I think even if a person didn't go through postpartum, like I feel like they would still struggle with that concept. So
yes.
Yeah. All right, so let's fast forward a little. Like, I know you just had your second child, Lila.
Yes.
It's about 6 months ago.
It was. Yep,
Yeah.
about 6 months
Yeah.
ago.
So
Time
it's
has flown by.
Yeah. Wow. Is control and anxiety still something you struggle with?
Yes. And this question makes me laugh because I do still struggle with control. And I mean, you could ask my husband or closest friends.
Yeah. And so, like, from what I know of your story, like, this is not without reason, So tell us, how did Lila's birth compare to Jackson's?
So with Jackson, our first, I had a healthy pregnancy and pretty easy delivery. He is now thriving, talkative, full of energy 2.5-year-old. And when we became pregnant with our second baby, with our baby girl, Lila, I really was mostly calm because I had just done this once before. Like, I knew how things were going to go. Things weren't as scary to me this go around. And I spent a lot less time on Google.
Yeah. Oh, the Google hole.
Yeah.
Yeah. Goodbye to that.
Yeah.
The Google rabbit hole of doom sometimes.
Yes. Yeah. It's a good way to put that. Yeah. But the day that Lila was born, I mean, it went as smoothly as it possibly could have. She was healthy. We were the happiest we've ever been, truly. And it was sweet watching Jackson become a big brother. He was smitten by her. It was so sweet. All the things, all the feels.
So everything was going great.
Everything was going great. And then after getting home, though, breastfeeding just wasn't working out for me for multiple reasons. I kind of had a hard go at it the first time with him. And I gave it my best shot with her, but ended up being hospitalized due to an infection.
I think that's the reason. So, just stop.
Yeah. So, so I quit that. The day they sent me to the hospital for the infection was when I would like to say that the storm started for me.
Yeah.
I had to spend a night away from our new baby who needed me.
Like, how old was she at this point?
Oh, not even 2 weeks old.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah. So tiny.
Tiny. And, like, that was the worst possible feeling to me. It was the worst possible thing that I could have imagined at the time.
Yeah.
I knew she would be fine. I knew that she'd be taken care of. But I also just had this fear that the moment I wasn't with her, something bad would happen.
Yeah. Like, you were keeping it together.
But it was me.
Yeah.
But the only thing that really did help me was knowing that she would be using the Owlette monitor. Yes.
Yeah. We use that too for Asher, and I'm a fan. So
yes.
I understand. Our pediatrician even told us, like, hey, like, if you need that just for peace of mind, like, totally use it. Like, he was for it.
Yeah.
So, and it did help.
Yes.
Because otherwise, I mean, think about how it used to be, like, for our parents, with nothing.
They just stood over us and watched us sleep and breathe.
Yeah, and breathe,
Yeah.
Like, So,
and, some people still do.
Yeah.
And, you know.
So, it happens. Yeah, so how did that help you?
So we had used the same monitor with our son, and we were big fans. So for those that don't know what this is, the Owlet monitor, it's a device that goes around the baby's foot and tells you their heart rate and their oxygen levels through an app on your phone. So that while the baby sleeps with it on their foot, it will alarm you if either of those things dip too low or too high. Mm-hmm. So I get out of the hospital and return home to my husband and 2 babies. But just a few days later at 12 a.m. in the middle of the night, our Owlet monitor starts going off. It turned red and it was pretty much screaming at us.
Yeah.
And at first, I really didn't think anything of it because occasionally we got inaccurate readings using it with our son. He would kick it and it would move just slightly and start going off. The device really has to be placed perfectly around the foot.
Yeah, I'm pretty snug on there, which you can make it happen, but yeah.
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 It's very sensitive. Mm-hmm. But I figured that night it just needed adjusting, honestly.
Yeah.
So I look at my phone to check her levels, and it says that her heart rate is beating at 295 beats per minute.
Oh my gosh, it's like really fast.
Yeah.
Like, whoa.
I know.
Yeah.
And so I thought to myself, yeah, that can't be right. And so I took the device off. At this point, Lila is awake, lying there just looking at us, but she's being really still. I put the sock back on and get the same readings, almost 300 beats per minute. So not really knowing what to do or if this was actually happening.
She's just sitting there really calm.
Yeah, she looks okay.
Around.
I mean, we turned our lamp on, and so it was a little bit dim in the room, and she's just laying there looking at us. But I gently laid my head on her tiny chest to try and count the beats per minute, only to realize that it was impossible.
To count, yeah.
It was impossible.
It was just going that fast.
Just going so fast.
Oh, man. That just sounds like immediate panic. Like,
yeah,
I don't even know what I would do. And I'd be like, Caleb, because he's the nurse in our family. So I just kind of put a lot of that on him. Yes. Maybe I shouldn't, but it gives me comfort knowing that somebody is trained.
Totally understand.
So that's probably what I would have done. Like, Caleb, what do we do? Let's go to the hospital. I mean, I don't know. So yeah. What did y'all do?
So we got her to the ER pretty quick, and they got us back in no time. The nurses initially were pretty doubtful that our monitor was accurate. I remember going in and telling them that, they're like, why are you here? And I'm like, well, the Owlet was going off. And they I felt like they rolled their eyes a little bit, But when they got her hooked up to all the things, she was, in fact, in SVT.
Ooh, SVT. Yes. What is that?
So Lila was experiencing something called supraventricular tachycardia. So it's a type of arrhythmia that deals with the heart's electrical system that cause her heart to beat rapidly.
Man, so was she having kind of like a heart attack almost?
No, and I don't really think that it puts her at risk for having a heart attack, but I'm also not a doctor. The worst thing that I've read and heard about happening in babies with SVT is that after prolonged episodes that they can begin to go into heart failure. But I believe it's super rare.
Yeah. So what happened next after they figured out hey, that Owlet was legit?
So I remember sitting in the ER with Travis that night and looking at her tiny body on the adult-sized bed, not knowing what to do, trying to be close to her, but also not in the way because it was pretty chaotic. The doctors and nurses were coming in and out and doing all the things, and watching them work to get her out of her SVT episode. And I remember just watching her face turn pale, her extremities turn blue because her body was pumping all the blood to her major organs. I mean, it was terrifying. That
just sounds mortifying. Just watching her turn color like that.
Yes,
and just having to sit there.
I know.
And just watch it.
Yeah.
And there's nobody you can really yell at because they are doing what they can do.
We were just watching it happen.
Yeah.
And so the monitors that she was hooked up to were ringing nonstop because her heart rate was dangerously high. So it was really loud in the room, but she was really quiet. and still.
Mm.
And they finally got her out of her SVT by shoving a bag of ice on her face.
Oh my gosh.
I know. It was intense. And I don't know the science behind why that worked.
But hey,
it got her out of it.
Yeah.
And so after that, I got to hold her again while they tried to get an IV in. And that was 30 minutes of them sticking her with a needle over and over again before they actually hit a vein. They tried on her left arm, her right arm, both feet. We're about to try in her head.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
I sure had a good vein in his head.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey.
So,
I just wanted them to find a place where they can get it in.
Can we stop? Yeah.
I didn't care at that point.
Yeah.
But it was,
man.
Yeah.
That's just very traumatic.
Yeah.
Very traumatic. Yeah.
And like at that point, Lila she's screaming, she's crying. I'm panicking.
Yeah.
And I'm seemingly unable to silence the thoughts going through my head.
Mm-hmm.
But I will never forget that it was also in this moment that God quieted my busy brain and brought me right to Psalm 23. And I actually began singing these verses out loud in the ER while I held and rocked our daughter.
Wow. Would you mind reading Psalm 23 for us?
Yeah, sure. Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. And so really, the first 4 verses mean the most to me, and I'll read those again if that's okay.
Yeah.
The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me.
Man, and you were singing this too?
Yes,
yeah.
I was.
Yeah.
Yeah, at first, I was kind of just reciting it for memory. And then I think I must have listened to a song, and I know now that it was Come What May by We Are Messengers. And they have a part in that song that they focus on the first 4 verses of Psalm 23. So it took me a minute to figure out what the tune was, but after I got it, I just sang it over and over again, while I rocked her.
Wow.
Yeah.
And did it help her too, or is it?
Yeah, I think it calmed her down a little bit.
Yeah.
It calmed me down as well.
It calmed you for
Maybe
sure.
It calmed me more than her, but
But why did it mean so much to you? Why do you think that's something that came to your mind?
Just focusing on Psalm 23, reminded me that we are promised trials will arise in our lives, and that it's not a matter of if they're going to happen to you, it's when. And so reading this passage and really reflecting on it over and over again taught me that our hope in times of darkness is his presence, not the outcome of the situation that you're in. And so I think the Lord coming to me in that moment made me realize that he is there to walk through the valleys with us. He's not a God that says, okay, Adriane, you see that valley, you're about to cross that, and you're going to do it alone, but I'll be there on the other side. I'll meet you over there. Instead, he is our shepherd guiding us through the entire way.
Yeah, he is our friend.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, he is our friend.
Absolutely.
Man, yeah, I just think it's cool how Psalm 23 just came to you. I think that's one of the great things of why people who are Christians should read scripture, because it gets embedded in you. And it's when you get squeezed, when things like that tend to come out.
Yeah, I love that.
And that's how, that's why it's important. You want things that are important to you to be able to come out of you when you need it to. And this is, I think, just a prime example of that,
Absolutely.
how the word works.
Yeah. And honestly, I was amazed by the way God revealed himself to me in that moment. I mean, I'm panicking. I hadn't even gotten around to praying or calling out to him about the situation that we were in. But he didn't wait for me. Instead, he let me know that he was right there with me. And it truly brought me just a peace that made no sense.
Yeah.
In that moment.
Like he came to you. That's pretty, kind of gave you a little, I'm just envisioning like a tap on the shoulder. You know?
Yes.
You know, like that comforting friend there that has their hand just right there.
Just laid their hand right on my shoulder.
And it just soothed. Yeah. Kind of makes me think of it's in Exodus 14:14, which is just a little bit out of context, but it still makes you think about this anyways. This is like the Lord shall fight for you. You need only to be still.
Yes.
That scenario just makes me think about that. Like you didn't have to do anything and he was already on your behalf.
Yeah. I'd say he took the wheel.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Shout out to Carrie Underwood here.
Should we sing it? No.
Yeah, man. So what else did y'all try to, do to, hold on to God?
We spent a lot of time in prayer.
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time in prayer myself. I know Travis spent a lot of time in prayer. We prayed together, and we also, just brought our community in on what was happening. And so we really felt like we had a whole community of people praying with us during her time in the NICU, and it was such a comfort.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought him in, because I know some people who are I guess I would say that they themselves are just private people and want to bring that in. But no, this is the perfect time to bring in your community.
Absolutely.
Especially if it's people from, from Sunday school or your life group. I mean, that's what they're there for. That's really the whole purpose of being plugged in like that, so they can show up in those traumatic moments. So they can be the hands and feet of Jesus. That's what we like to say sometimes.
Yeah, but they were such a blessing to us.
Yeah, help love on. And by helping love on, it's just nice to know when people are praying with you on something, and that they're going to be there in no matter what, filling in whatever gaps are there. So, yeah. And it's really, really great that you brought them in.
But, as believers, we're called to live a life of faith, like it talks about in Galatians 2:20.
And what's in Galatians 2:20?
Galatians 2:20 says, "And I no longer live, but Christ lives in me. The life I now live in the body, I live by faith in the Son of God who loved me and gave himself for me."
So what does this verse mean to you?
It's a reminder for me that my own personal resources are insufficient during life storms. And so I just rested in knowing that I could rely on him fully to get us through, and that it had nothing to do with me.
Yeah. What were some other things that were going on at that time that were hard to deal with?
So we were in the NICU a total of 12 days, the longest days of our lives. I know that's no time compared to what some other families have to walk through.
Yeah, but that was just over a week, and at the moment, you don't know how long you're going to be there.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's a really valid feeling, hey, this was the longest days of our lives, because you just didn't know. You don't, now you know it was only 12 days.
Right. That's very true.
But in the moment, you're like, I don't know.
I know. And every day that we would go, they'd be like, well, maybe tomorrow, maybe we'll know something tomorrow. Yeah. And so it was always maybe tomorrow, And
at the same time, it could also go the other way as well. There was no way.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's very valid. Yeah.
And at times I allowed myself to be discouraged by just the lack of answers because they really didn't have any. Yeah. Like I said, we just really knew nothing, and they didn't know why she was in SVT. They didn't know what was causing her to go into SVT, but it was crazy, how at peace I was about it all. And I know that was God's hand on us.
Was Psalms 23, is that something that just kind of stayed with you during those 12 days?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I really focused on it. I listened to Shirley and Goodness by Shane and Shane.
Oh,
I
good.
did.
My people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I read that passage every day.
Yeah.
Yeah. Constantly. It was in my head.
Yeah.
Which definitely helped.
Yeah. It's good. But what did y'all ultimately learn about her condition? What does this mean for her in her life?
So I had been hoping, when we were in the hospital, that Lila's SVT had been caused by something that was fixable.
Yeah.
When we first got there, they thought that maybe she had an infection. And sometimes when babies have infections or they're sick, it can cause their heart to do kind of just some crazy stuff. And so I was kind of hoping that like maybe she just has an infection, and like once we, get her some antibiotics, like that will be, but no, unfortunately, it's just something that she has, at least for now. They say that there's a 50% chance that this could be something that she grows out of, but it's hard to know. She hasn't yet.
Yeah.
But she takes medicine every 8 hours to regulate her heart rhythm.
Man.
And we've had a lot of success with that.
Okay.
And she has many appointments with her cardiologist and her electrophysiologist, and we get the best care. And you best believe we'd be using the Owlet monitor.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Owlet all the way. And I promise, guys, we're not like, no endorsements here. But you got 2 testimonies. It's like, believe the Owlet.
That's right.
Good stuff. Yeah. Man. Well, so do you think she'll be able to play sports or be a singer or do anything with like high cardio, or like, is that something you're advised not to do?
It's hard to know with her still being so little.
Yeah.
I do know that treatment outcomes are excellent for those that do have this condition. And we've seen that for her too. And so that's an encouragement to me that there are kids out there playing sports and living completely normal lives with SVT.
Okay.
So I'm hopeful that yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
We'll
I want her to dance and play soccer and all the things.
All the things. Yeah. Awesome. Okay. So how did this whole situation, how did it impact your relationship with God moving forward?
Oh, that's a big question. God, he doesn't waste our trials and can actually use them in really beautiful ways. I feel like this situation brought me to a place of knowing how unhealthy my need for control was. I mean, it was wrecking me. The circumstances that I found our family in just allowed me to stop relying on my own strength. There was truly nothing that I could do. And so I feel like knowing that there was nothing that I could do, my focus shifted from myself and the idea that no one is going to love my child and fight for them more than I would, to realizing that I could never love my children and care for them better than our Almighty God. He will always love them more than I do.
Man, that's just a powerful thought, just I'm gonna sit and think on that for a moment. Just really pause, like that I could never, we as moms could never love our children and care for them more than God.
I know.
Like, he's got it. Like, that's just a powerful thought to have, and something that if we really took to heart, really for all areas of our life, I think would be just, wow, for the better. Like, such a change. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Is this something, you tell your heart when you're feeling extra anxious?
Oh, yes. I have to remind myself of this often. But with Jackson, I took medication for postpartum anxiety. And so, but I feel like speaking this truth into my heart has allowed me to kind of move away from being on meds this go around. I do have medication to take if I need it, but I really haven't had to take it hardly at all. And I also know that like I've grown in my relationship with the Lord through this situation. And I do know that he loves my children more than I do. So it's just a comfort.
Yeah. It's good. So what else have you learned about God, throughout this experience?
Just so much about his kindness. Like one of our NICU nurses was a friend of mine from high school. And I remember walking into the NICU like the first day after that night and just seeing her. And she locked eyes with me and I locked eyes with her and I was like, oh, wow, like you're here. Like I just kind of felt a little bit better. Yeah. And so she cared for Lila multiple days. And when we weren't able to be with her, she would send pictures and reassure us that like she was okay.
Yeah. Man, that's like really special, like really cool how that worked out. I feel like that's just like a God wink,
Oh, yeah. But that's not all. And so I was set to start a part-time job at our church a few months after all this went down. And I was really excited to start work, but I struggled a little bit knowing that Lila would have to be in Mother's Day out at First West while at work.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. And I remember filling out her forms and writing just like a slew of information about SVT, like listing all of the signs and symptoms, how to check her pulse. I even bought a stethoscope to keep in her bag. I know. Yeah. I mean, I was anxious that they wouldn't know what to look for and that she would go into an episode and be sitting there all day. But the first day that I dropped her off at her class, I learned that Lila's teacher had gone through the exact same thing with her daughter.
Wow.
I know.
That's crazy.
Her child had also spent time in the NICU for SVT, was on meds similar to Lila's, knows how to accurately check an infant's pulse, familiar with signs and symptoms. Like, how cool is that? The Lord is so kind to us.
Yeah.
And so, like, that gave me
crazy.
more of an assurance and confidence during my transition into my new role as a part-time employee and a mom of 2.
I mean, yeah. I mean, how could you not? I mean, that's awesome. And I just feel like, man, that's even more of like just the Lord's provision.
I know.
You know?
I think that when she said all of that to me, that first day at drop-off, I think I probably just stared at her in disbelief. And I remember walking up to my office and my desk area and like telling them, like, you will never believe, like,
what happened?
What just happened?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's what we would all call like a God moment.
Absolutely.
Like, yeah. Yeah. I mean, and just what are the odds? I mean, how many people even have SVT?
I know.
Like, for that to even happen.
Yeah.
This isn't like this is asthma or something.
No, it's definitely not asthma. I wish it was asthma, but it's not.
Yeah, it's not. So, like,
But yeah, so SVT is actually the most common arrhythmia in babies.
Oh, okay.
Just from all the reading and research that I've done and what I've learned, it affects 1 in 2,500 children from...
So common, but not that common.
Common, but not that common. And, you know, but it is pretty cool that the first day I dropped her off, I handed her over to someone that knows more about it than I do.
Yeah, like she's more seasoned in that. So that's really a comfort. Just... Man, the Lord really does have us in his hands.
Yeah.
You know, they might sound like a childish little song, but there's so much theological truth in it.
Absolutely.
How he holds us and carries us.
Yeah.
And just really just, you know, he is our friend. Like God really does love us. I think we say that so much that we just don't really acknowledge what that means.
Right.
You know, God loves you, God loves you. But like, no, like he really loves you.
He really does.
Like more than you love anything.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting here thinking about that. And I'm getting really excited about it. I'm like, wow, like,
I know.
You know, he does.
He does.
And like, we don't just say that all the time, like so arbitrarily, you know, but it's a truth. And for you to sit in that, for anybody to sit and really think on that, like that's a really great thing.
Yeah. It's powerful.
Yeah, it is. You know, what would you tell someone now that is going through something?
You know, it's so easy to become distracted and frustrated just by our circumstances. But we serve a sovereign, all-knowing, all-powerful God, a God who cares for us, a God who loves us. You know, he is the good shepherd and our hope in times of darkness. It's important to remember who he is and to have a mindset that he's present with us through the bad moments in our lives. And so I think I would tell someone just to reject what your mind is telling you about your situation and find your rest in knowing that our hope is found in him and his comfort.
Mm. Yeah, because I think that's great too, because, you know, our initial emotions, I mean, they're just emotions. They're just feelings. You can't let that be like the thing that rules you.
Yes.
You know, you have to stamp it on what you know to be true. And what we can know to be true is that he does love us and that he does care for us and provides way for us to be at peace in him.
Yes.
So we have to like really just sink our claws into that, stand on that truth. So yes, definitely agree with you. Man, Jesus is our friend. Yes, and amen to that. Yeah. Well, Adriane, thank you for coming out and sharing your very powerful story. I think it's just a great reminder, you know, of that God does care for us, you know.
He does. Thank you for having me, Brandy. It's been fun.
Yeah, great. Yeah. Yeah.
My name is Adriane, and this is my story of the middle.
This is your host, Brandy Bostic, and you've been listening to the Up From the Muck podcast. Check out my Patreon account if you want a little extra for merch and other cool perks.
Psalm 40, verse 2. He brought me up from a desolate pit, out of the muddy clay, and set my feet on a rock, making my steps secure.